Good evening, folks. Welcome to stpete.net meetup. Tonight we are broadcasting on the Six Figure Dev channel. That is another channel that Clayton and I run along with our third compadre, John Ash. And just for managerial purposes and maintaining that, we're experimenting just consolidating on the single channel. So let us know in chat if that's acceptable, if you appreciate that. Martin says, happy Microsoft Updates Tuesday. Yeah, that's a good point. Steve, did you update your machine, or are you on a I saw your desktop. You're on a PC. You're not on.
Yeah, haven't updated though.
Well, don't update during the presentation. It's just a recipe for disaster. So chat, grab a slice of pizza, grab a drink, find a seat. We'll give it a few minutes. We'll do the introductions and all that fun stuff. I'm your host, John Calloway. Clayton Hunt is the co-host and wizard behind all of the technology here. So we appreciate all of the screens and things that he has to do to get this magic to work. Steve Bilogan is our guest this evening, going to be talking about creating applications with C# and XAML everywhere using the UNO platform, among other things. Yeah, we are, I guess, sponsored by Dr. Pepper. I've got yeah. You could save so much money, or early diabetes or something.
I've been trying for years. I haven't gotten it yet.
I'm not sure that that's really something to attain or try for, but whatever. We do this every month, virtually for the last year or so. Actually, before that, we were virtual even when we were in person. We continued to try to do the stream when it's safe to get back in person. I know that many of our community members are anxious to get back to in-person meetings, and when it's safe to do so, we will certainly do that. Looking forward to it. We'll continue the broadcast. So look for us the second Tuesday of the month every month, until we decide to change dates and times for whatever reason. Yeah, we're always looking for speakers. We're looking for topics. If you want to volunteer yourself, volunteer a coworker, something like that, just let us know. While we are purely remote, we are accepting outside contributors, such as our neighbors to the north in Canada to virtually join us and present. And as well as elsewhere and across the nation, across the world. We'd be happy to have anyone at this point. Matter of fact, when we are back in person, if anybody's traveling and wants to join up and meet up and present in person at the stpete.net meetup in Florida, we would love to have you. With that, we will be back next month. We do have something scheduled, so we'll have another presentation already lined up, and then we've got some additional feelers. So if anybody out there wants to volunteer to speak in the coming months, just be sure to let us know. Do the subscribe, Twitch thing. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you can get a free subscription, so you can subscribe with your Amazon Prime account if you prefer. We would certainly love to have you. The Six Figure Developer channel, Clayton's showing something on screen. That's weird. We do host the Six Figure Developer channel. We have the podcast at 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday evenings and 8 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday evenings. We do some live coding. We'd love to have you join us for that as well. That's probably enough of my rambling, and we're about 8 minutes past the hour, so we'll hand it over to Steve Bilogan, and he can introduce himself and let us know all about what he does and what he's going to talk to us about tonight. So, Steve, take it away.
Yeah, so hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm happy to be talking to people in Florida. I love Florida, so like John said, I'm coming to you from Canada. So I'm excited to talk about this. It should be good. I am a engineer on the UNO platform team, so I work a lot on the back end stuff, like shapes and brushes and drawing and lots of math. It's all fun. So we could just get started if we're all ready.
You are ready whenever.
Cool. So is my screen up? Yeah, it is. I see it. Okay. Cool. All right. So hello. Again, my name is Steve Bilogan. I'm a developer on the Uno platform team. I'm excited to talk to you today about how we can utilize the power of C# and XAML and bring that experience and those capabilities to not only above and beyond Windows to all platforms. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'll start with sort of this. I'm sure for any cross-plat presentation, you've seen something similar about this problem and the solution. So the problem that we're trying to tackle is that we're trying to tackle that problem when a project can stretch across multiple platforms. And the problems are there's a potential for effort duplication, since we would need to re-implement logic for each individual platform. You also need to take into account the skill set of your current team and availability of training and availability of developers just in general for the technologies that you'd like to use. And another scenario that we wanted to look at was also people trying to revive legacy applications, so enterprise line of business applications, and bring them into the 21st century. So this could lead to very high rewrite costs. A lot of legacy apps are now actually being brought to the web thanks to things like WebAssembly. So this is where Uno platform really shines. And so with these problems this problem sort of space, we find that Uno is sort of a really good solution for this problem. So it's what we like to call truly universal. And what is meant by that is that we believe by utilizing the power of UWP or WinUI, which I'll get into an explanation of what it is, we believe this is the best framework built from the ground up by Microsoft with responsiveness and adaptiveness in mind. So it means by leveraging this framework, this WinUI framework API surface, you can have something working on a small mobile device all the way up to large 4K screens with everything in the middle. And so with Uno, we're building that bridge from this WinUI technology to bring it to all platforms, making it truly universal, and not only just for Windows. So let's start by making sure we all just have a baseline understanding. I already mentioned mentioned WinUI, so let's get a baseline understanding of basically what that is. And the following slides are courtesy of, you'll see they look different. They actually have nice animations. They're courtesy of Ryan Demopoulos. So he's from Microsoft, and he gave this talk at Uno conference at UnoConf in 2020, and it's available on YouTube, I believe. So you can go check that out for sure. So over the years, there have been, I forgot to start my timer. There have been 4 major UX frameworks from the Windows perspective. So first there was MFC, then WinForms, then the big guys came along in 2006 and 2012 with WPF and UWP XAML. And WPF in 2006 introduced XAML and introduced a sophisticated animation system, data binding, new layouting. It was really what they called the fountain of innovation for developing Windows applications. And then in 2012, UWP XAML came along, and it's similar in nature, but an evolution of WPF, if you can think of it like that. So it introduced the Fluent Design language, more advanced animations, new controls that go above and beyond just WPF. And so UWP XAML was created for these UWP apps, these universal Windows platform apps. And you could think, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's those Windows 10 store apps, the ones that are running in that sandbox. They're not the normal desktop apps that everyone used to use or still uses, sorry. So basically like I mentioned, there are 2 types of apps, those UWP apps and the Windows desktop Win32 apps. And the Windows desktop Win32 apps relied mostly on the frameworks to the left, whereas now the Windows 10 store apps are using this UWP XAML framework. And so this leads into some challenges with the new UWP XAML framework that kind of need to be addressed. Number 1 is it can't be used by all types of all app types. So there's a huge audience of desktop and Win32 devs that aren't able to use the latest, most modern UX stack from Windows. The other big challenge is that it started out baked into the Windows operating system itself, so it's hard to deliver new features. So for example, when they had the feature for Xbind, they needed to ship that with a new version of Windows. Not everyone always runs the latest version of Windows. Some features don't get adopted into the mass market on day one because of that. And lastly, because UWP XAML ships with the OS, like I said, you can have inconsistent behaviors across operating system versions. So certain things like Xbind, again, may behave differently on different versions of Windows. So it's really like a compatibility headache. And so this is where the WinUI library came to be. So WinUI 2 was this first evolution of it. And it's just think of it as a library of just has some controls and some styles, and it sits on top of the UWP XAML framework itself, but it's decoupled from the OS. So it's not actually baked into the OS like UWP XAML is. It does rely on it though. And so this solves some of the challenges that were mentioned previously. So we're able to backport features on day one, regardless of the OS version. You have a consistent behavior across OS versions since you have one central implementation for everything. So the WinUI 2 library contains, a single implementation for number box, and that is the same across all versions. And you have the flexibility to ship new features and fixes whenever they're needed. So WinUI is no longer tied to the operating system, which is just its main goal is to be independent of the operating system. And so you can think of the WinUI 2, that small library of controls and styles, coupled with UWP XAML. That is the second generation of WinUI. That's what we call WinUI 2. And now going forward, coming up this year, hopefully, is WinUI 3. And so WinUI 3 is taking this second generation of WinUI, and it's lifting everything out of the operating system and bringing all those UX features into a decoupled library. So bringing UWP XAML and the WinUI 2 library out into a completely decoupled library from the OS. And this will be going forward the new gold standard for writing applications for Windows is to use the WinUI 3 APIs and library. And so one final thing before we get on with this is the big distinguishing characteristic of WinUI 3 is that over WinUI 2 is that WinUI 3 can work across both or all app types. So Win32 and desktop apps and Windows 10 applications, both you can develop for both using WinUI 3. And it'll be, with .NET 5 support. Okay, so now that we have sort of like a baseline understanding of the history of, the app development for Windows and what WinUI is and how it's like sort of this evolution of UWP, I can answer a question of what is Uno and how we're taking these features and capabilities of WinUI and bringing them above and beyond Windows to all platforms. So just as a quick one-liner, like Uno Platform is an open source project which helps enterprise developers build single code base C# WinUI XAML applications for non-Windows platforms. So Uno is built on top of .NET, and it also takes advantage of the great Windows platform features such as accessibility, touch, keyboard, focus management, as well as rich controls such as the calendar, the grid, the charts, all coming from either Windows itself, the Windows Community Toolkit, or third-party vendors like Infragistics and Syncfusion, which support Uno. So I said before that the Uno platform is truly universal, and we also mean to say that it's truly native. So we actually sit on top of the native stacks. We're not trying to just draw pixels on our own here on a blank canvas. We want to make sure we get all the native behaviors of gestures and accessibility, etc. So we sit on top of things like UIKit or AppKit when we're targeting Mac OS, or the Android Views engine. And on the browser, we're rendering native elements in the DOM. So we wanted to reach, and with that, we wanted to reach even more platforms. And so we leveraged Skia as a backend to bring WinUI to even more platforms. So now WinUI can be bridged over to things like Linux and WPF or Windows 7 applications. And it runs like anywhere .NET runs, really. And so this is just to drive home this fact of, that we're truly native. Like when you're building an application with Uno, you're going to be building it with using WinUI, so you'd use a text block as a label, But what's actually happening behind the scenes is that we're using a UI label for iOS. We're using a text view for Android. We're using a paragraph, or we're just drawing it pixel by pixel for Skia. So you're using the UI API surface to build your application, but it's using these native stacks in the background. And same things for platform APIs. So for non-UI APIs, it's running the native APIs as well behind the scenes. And so we're kind of running out of room on this slide as we add more platforms that we support. But this is just a small taste of basically what this looks like, right? So we have just some XAML code here for displaying a text block, so just a label and a slider here, which is a component, which is a control in WinUI. And that'll compile down thanks to Uno and bring it to places like Linux, places like the web and Mac OS, and it'll look the same across all platforms if you want, depending on your style. But it's usable. It handles touch. It handles all that stuff. The bindings are working properly, so it's working the same across all the platforms that we support. And there's no better way to really start talking about Uno than at the pixel level. So in 2020, we believe that designers and developers should be able to control how apps look and feel, even when using multi-platform frameworks. And that's really important to us. So with that, we have to sort of step back and look at this. There's multiple strategies on the market that try to do this in different ways to make apps look and feel native and have, or look and feel however you want, sorry, and have that control over their styling and how they look. And so at one side of the spectrum, and I just want to talk about some of those strategies and where Uno lands between those strategies. So at one end of the spectrum, there's people creating, on this side, there's people creating abstractions on top of the native platforms themselves. And they let the native platform itself control the rendering without too much control over the way your views will look. It's really, it's up to the native platform to render its controls itself, and you kind of lose that control a little bit of how you can style things. And at the other end, this canvas rendering here is basically this idea that you just slap a canvas on the screen, it's blank, and you just draw every single pixel yourself. And you may, depending on what you're doing, you may lose some of the native behaviors that you would like on certain platforms like copy paste or localization or accessibility, things like that. And so what we believe is that Uno sort of fits right in the middle here. So it's really at the crossroads of native and pixel perfect. So by relying, and it's doing this by relying on what WinUI has to offer with things like a control templating, or what they're called look list controls. And basically what that means is you can tell WinUI to just say, okay, I want to draw, I don't know, a radio button or something, but I want to have 100% control over how this radio button looks. I can make it look however I want its template can be. And it just gives you the control template to play with it as you would like. So you have that 100% control of the styles of your application, but still utilizing the native aspect of it as well. And so how does this work? We'll go into more, like you'll see some better examples and stuff in the demos. But basically it implements the API surface of WinUI, of UWP and WinUI. So there are many UI APIs. So there's text box, there's image, stack panel, navigation view, number box, all the things you can think of that you can use in WinUI, as well as non-UI APIs. So file access, geolocation, depending on which devices and stuff you're targeting, accessing the sensors and things like that. So basically we take that entire API surface, and this is what you deal with. And under the scenes, that's where Uno Platform sort of goes to work and implements it the proper way for each native platform. And then on the Windows side, it sort of steps aside and lets Windows do its thing. It doesn't really do too much on the Windows head target. And so you write your app in XAML and C#, and you can start from scratch, which we'll see an application like that, or where you can import Uno into an existing UWP or WinUI application or library, which we'll also see. So if you have current code that is running as a Windows app, you can plug Uno into it and basically target all the platforms that we support on top of Windows. And so one of the first things I wanted to show was this native support for the Fluent UI and material design system. We released this gallery application. So it allows you to see all the controls that are readily supported to be able to toggle from Fluent and material between light and dark. You can copy the markup from we'll look at it on the web. So you can copy the markup from the web and put it straight into your app, and it runs everywhere. And you could also see how you can style your apps to rely on the native control rendering if you so wish, giving you full control if you do want to have per platform looks for your widgets. So if you want to have your app look like an iOS app on iOS and look like an Android app on Android and you know, all that stuff, you do have the capability of, I don't know if you could see this very easily, but on the right here, you have this native toggle. So it shows you what a native button would look like, and it just steps aside and lets the platform do the rendering for itself. So if we did a quick demo of that, trying not to stop the sharing because I'm scared. Okay, let me just double check that it's on the screen. Yes, okay. So this is the, and I'll just show something cool. If we look at the dev tools and I refresh the page, so if we were to look at the sources, not the sources, sorry, the network. Oh my God, get it out of the way. Here, you could actually see, I'll make this bigger for you in a second. You can actually see the bits of .NET or Mono coming down the pipe, the bits of Uno, as well as .NET coming down the pipe using WebAssembly and being brought to the browser and actually running. I think if we look up, yeah, here's all. Whoa, here's all the bits of .NET that we need that are coming down the pipe to us for the WebAssembly app. So let's just close that. So this is basically our gallery app where, again, we could see, we have, it starts out as the material design, but you can see we have the material buttons, the material text, checkboxes, radio buttons, toggle switches, all in material design. And there's a lot more on the left here. We have a lot more components, like things that come naturally from material, like things like card, combo boxes and all that fun stuff. And you could also toggle it to see what it would look like with the Fluent UI design system. So you can see it drastically changes. So it looks like a Windows application, looks like the Windows controls themselves. With the toggle switches, especially, I like to point out. So this really is like, and this is what we got into with this control templating, thanks to the power of WinUI. You have these lookless controls. So basically, this toggle switch, we can make it look however we want. We can make it look like a native iOS toggle switch or UI switch. We can look however we want it to look, or we can step aside and let the platform itself render its native version of this control. And then fun stuff like, light and dark theme that are coming for free out of the box because we're dealing with this. We're dealing with a platform that has APIs for light and dark already. Sort of froze there for a second. Okay. Yeah. So basically here's a light app. Yeah. So that's the Uno gallery. So it's really like a nice showcase of theming and really like the power that we have over that and styling. So if I go back, does this go back to my slides? Yeah, okay. So we also have the ability to basically use any .NET Standard 2.0 library that you like to use is able to be used in an Uno app. There's no problem with that. There's third-party controls from Syncfusion, from Infragistics. These are really big component vendors that have support for Uno, and there are more coming. as well as presentation frameworks. So things like Reactive UI, Prism, MVVM Cross. There are templates there's support for Uno, and there are templates to file new project for an MVVM Cross Uno app. That's there and ready for you to use. Plus much more. There's SKIA support. There's the MVVM. Not MVVM like toolkit. Well, yeah, that one too. But the new MVVM toolkit coming from the guys who are doing the Windows Community Toolkit. All that fun stuff. So I just wanted to step back and take a look, sort of where Uno came from, sort of our road that we traveled and the road ahead. So Uno was originally created to address cross-plat development for Android and iOS all the way back in 2013. And at that time, there were like not that many ways to do this. And so back then and still now, there are a lot of professional apps that were created for Android and iOS. Then around 2018, we saw what was happening with WebAssembly. And so WebAssembly, I sort of glossed over that before, but if we don't know, WebAssembly is a way of running all types of code, not just JavaScript, in the browser natively. So Rust, C++, C#. And so it runs within the security model of the browser itself. So there are no security problems like there were for third-party solutions like Silverlight or Flash. You could say Silverlight is now coming back thanks to Silverlight's goal is now being revived thanks to things like Uno. And around 2018, at that time, .NET or Mono was being brought to WebAssembly by the Xamarin team. And so they thought I wasn't there at that point, but let's try and run Uno in the browser and see what happens. And Uno was running in the browser thanks to the Mono WebAssembly being there. And around that same time, it was open source, Uno platform was. And since then, there have been a lot of developments. So again, things like reactive UI, UI testing, which we'll talk about, a Syncfusion preview. And then as we move along, we added new platforms. We added, I can't find them. We added Mac OS, we added Linux, we added support for .NET 5. We added Material and Fluent UI, like I showed, and continuing into this year with the 3.5 release, which has been released, and it came out at the same time as the WinUI 3 Preview 4 dropped. And hopefully WinUI 3 full, or maybe Preview 5, who knows, will come soon. And along with it will come the Uno support. And 3.6 is not too far away on this timeline as well. So we have lots of fun stuff coming in the future, and there's a lot of work going into this. So sort of some of the things that you get out of the box with Uno, like I mentioned before, this control templating for these lookless controls, data templating, the styling and theming engine is like we showed with the controls and with just application-wide light or dark. A big thing, conditional XAML. So big thing with cross-plat development is, like on certain platforms, maybe you want a different margin somewhere, or you don't want this element to be shown on the screen, blah, blah, blah. So we have XAML namespaces that you can define at the top and tag on certain elements or attributes to say, like, on Android, I want this element here. On not iOS, I want this margin here, blah, blah, blah. And so any combination of things you can think of. We also sit, since we're implementing the API surface of WinUI, they have those rich animations that I was talking about before, as well as shapes and brushes, which I work on a lot. So I put this one in here. Another thing that I really like to talk about this, because I think it's really cool, and it's just a good thing for like the developer experience, is that assets and localization images, so assets and strings, only have to be defined once. So if you're familiar with Android or iOS development, say, for example, you don't have to take your image assets and put them directly into an MDPI, HDPI, XHDPI, XHDPI folder, then take them again and get them to go into the iOS plist with the @2x and @3x. So all you have to do is basically put them into the assets folder in the like you would for a UWP application in the shared project, and I'll show all this in a second. And Uno platform in the background will take those, and if you add the scaling suffix to it, like you would for a Windows 10 application, it'll read that scale suffix and it'll put them in the proper folders that need to go wherever they need to go on the proper platform heads. So it'll put it in the HDPI, MDPI folders wherever they need to go. It also supports localized assets, I forgot to say. So you add that language suffix and you can localize your assets as well as your strings. And strings, same idea. So you just need to put them in UWP's resw file. You don't have to deal with the strings.xml or the iOS plist, things like that. And so this is a slide that I already talked about. That shouldn't be in here. But again, basically we have this ecosystem of libraries that are supporting Uno. So the Windows Community Toolkit, Reactive UI, like I said, SQLite, Syncfusion, and we'll show some Syncfusion Infragistic stuff for fun. But just quickly, I wanted to touch on this because this is also really cool that we use every day at Uno. So at Uno Platform, we are a big believer in automated UI testing. So for UI-driven applications, the highest level of confidence you can have in testing is having an automated way of actually interacting with your application. So we created this Uno.UI test framework, it's called. Uno UI test, and it's based on Xamarin UI test. It's based on the Xamarin UI test framework, for Android and iOS, and based on Selenium for WebAssembly. I hope I'm saying that right. Selenium. So basically, it's a unified way of defining tests and running them for every platform, every supported platform. And like Uno, it's free, it's open source, and it's used by Uno itself to test and verify our builds.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that we had in chat. Can this be tested with a framework like XUnit or InUnit or something like that?
Yeah. So we do unit testing as well with, I think it's like the Visual Studio built-in test, but yeah, with NUnit and XUnit, like .NET unit testing stuff will work. Yes, it will. And so for the UI test stuff, we kind of rely on this Uno UI test. But if you were to play around with it, you'd see it's very similar to Xamarin UI test. It just kind of adds some more syntactic sugar and some more helper methods. But really, it drives the WebAssembly part, which is like a huge win. And so I don't know if you could see this on the screen very well, but it's just normal things. Like the big thing here is wait for dependency property value. So you can actually set and read dependency properties on your controls that are on the screen and interact with them. And you can see it on the left here being driven on a WebAssembly site, an Uno app being tested. So like I mentioned before, the Fluent UI system the Fluent UI design system now comes baked into the Uno platform. So every time you start a new app with Uno, you'll be able to get access to the Fluent UI design system and have it run and look the same across all platforms, if you so wish. So you still have those capabilities to style your application for all platforms the same way, so they have one cohesive style, or you can, if you wish, style it per platform, use the native platforms or different styling per platform. That's all up to you. But basically out of the box, it comes out with a Fluent design system baked in. And Uno, like we saw in the gallery, also has material, so as a standalone theme that you can use. And again, it works across all platforms. There's a sketch that's available to get your designer started if you want, platform.uno/material. But basically, you get all the good material design goodness, and it'll work for for Uno apps, not only on Android, but on all platforms. And so yes. I like this one. So this was an app. So this was, I'm going to talk a little bit about, like I mentioned before, you can take an existing UWP application that you find or that you have, plug Uno into it and bring it to new platforms. And so basically I was playing around with the Surface Duo emulator. And if you don't know what the Surface Duo is, it's the Microsoft's Android phone that is a dual screen, and it sort of like opens and closes like a book. Like it has that hinge. And so I was playing around with it, and I thought it would be really cool to have like a Pokedex app on it, because it sort of looks like a Pokedex. And so I was originally just looking like how to deal with dual screens on Android and blah, blah, blah. And then I just thought of like, maybe I'll use the Uno platform for this. And so I just searched on GitHub, and I found this by this guy called Disk Loser, and it was Dexer. It's on GitHub, and it's like 4 or 5 years old. It hasn't been touched. There's no updates for 4 or 5 years. And so I pulled it down, and it looks like that in the GIF, and we'll look at it in a second. And I just pulled it down, I plugged Uno into it, and I was off to the races. Basically, just to do some small adjustments, and it was working. So it's available now. I called it Dex Uno, and it's on my GitHub, KZO0. And we'll take a look at it now. I guess we'll take a look at the code first. Maybe we'll look at we'll look at the app first. I need to find it. Where is the emulator? There. Does that show up on screen? Yes. Okay. So basically, this is the app running on a Surface Duo emulator. So this is a UWP app, a 4 or 5 year old UWP app running on Android on the Surface Duo. Yeah, and so you can loop through, and then if I were to split it to go to both screens, there you'd see the second pane would now open up, which usually on the UWP app would usually just be a second, like another page that would navigate to. But now, since Uno supports dual screens, I got it to work like this. And so you could just, choose different Pokemon and see their stats and all that fun stuff. So it's like a little mini Pokedex. So if we look at the code quickly, on the main page, is it big enough? Where am I? Yeah, I am using this 2-pane view. And you can see that it's coming from something, the namespace is Muxy. So if we look back up here, this is actually the Microsoft UI XAML controls. So it's the WinUI library. So Uno is so this is a UWP application, and on top of it, it's using that WinUI library I was talking about. And so Uno has support for all that. And basically it uses this 2-pane view, and pane 1 is that main page with like all the Pokemon that you can scroll through, and pane 2 all the way down here is just that Pokemon detail page, and you pass the binding of the Pokemon that you want to show, and then that's it. So that was like the biggest change I had to do was just put that 2-pane view in, but everything else has really been untouched, except for we can look at the project structure of what an Uno app looks like now. So if you see here, so this is basically what an Uno app looks like when you start, and a current Uno app looks like when you start. So you have originally what this would have looked like when I pulled it from GitHub is this core Uno, the core Dex Uno library that the developer created, and it would have one head, the UWP head. So basically, plugging in Uno gives you all these project heads, so all these platforms you can reach and build for now. And on top of that, this shared application. So this shared project. And this, if you don't know what shared projects are, it doesn't compile down to its own like DLL or anything like the CS projects. It's just a bucket of files that will get shared to each individual CS project. So each individual platform head will use these files in here. And that's sort of like where the magic sauce happens. So basically, all I had to do was take everything out of this UWP head where it originally was and place it into this shared head. And if we look inside here, the first thing you'll see are the assets, which is what I was talking about before. So you share assets with all the platform heads, whether that's strings or images or whatever it is. So if we look in here, all my images for my Pokemon are under the assets folder, and they're all here. And then Uno does its magic and places it into each platform head where they're supposed to be placed. So that's basically the app. It's just like I didn't really touch too much other than that. Like you just move those files and off you go. And your entry point is the app.xaml. Your entry point is the app.xaml into your application. The online just initializes everything and you're good to go. And if you want it to look like, if I open the Android head, it's being very slow for some reason. There we go. See, there's nothing really in it except for basically the main activity, which doesn't have too much in it. But you can see it's inheriting from this WinUI XAML application activity that does all the fun stuff. So going back. Yeah, so that was the idea of sort of migrating an existing UWP application. I thought that was really cool. Just like an app that hasn't been touched in years, running for one platform is now running on all these platforms. And so something else that wanted to be touched on that we'll see in a demo as well next is the Skia Sharp support for WebAssembly. So Skia itself is an open source 2D graphics library. It's like a very rich library for building or for drawing whatever you want to draw. Like it's really powerful. And Skia Sharp is basically the .NET wrapper for this library that allows you to bring this to the .NET world. And so we have support for Skia rendering engine on WebAssembly provided by Skia Sharp. And you have this SK XAML canvas for the Uno platform. So Skia Sharp, so Uno support for Skia Sharp is built into Skia Sharp. It's there. We've partnered with them and they have support for Uno now. And we could take a look at an application that will be using Skia. And it will be using Infragistics controls. So Infragistics, again, like I mentioned before, is a really big component vendor. They have components for the web, for Xamarin, for WPF, for UWP, for a bunch of platforms. And now they support Uno as well. So they do a lot of charts and things like that. So if we look at which one am I doing? This one. I'll just run this quickly. So this is a Color Explorer application. I'll just get it to boot up. And yeah, I'm running the WebAssembly head for this one, but I could run it for Android or for iOS. I just don't want to deal with the emulator. But basically, it's just going to boot up a little bit. It's running in debug right now. So basically, the idea of this, and we'll look at the code in a second. But what you're looking at here is basically a Skia blank canvas that this bitmap has been painted on, has been rendered on, and you're rendering this graph on the bottom as well, which we'll see in a second. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put my cursor anywhere on this image, and it'll show you a live graph of the RGB values, the red, green, blue values of any part of the image that I'm on. So if I start moving, you see the graph is just generating data. And just to prove that it's right, if I go over a red spot and I start moving around, you see that the red line, you get mostly a red value, right? And then you can go across and see, the crosshair view of this graph. And this is all running natively on the web for controls that were originally built for UWP, but now they work on the web and Android and Linux and iOS and all that fun stuff. So if we look at the code, do I want to close this? No. Okay. So if we look at the code, the first two things we see. Where am I? Oh, yes. Okay. Is this good? Should I put this? Okay. The first thing you see is this Picture Explorer, which is a custom control here on the side, Picture Explorer. And if we open this up, this is going to be the actual image and what's tracking the pointer over the image. you could see that it's actually an SK XAML canvas, like I was pointing out in that slide before. So it's a Skia Canvas that is coming from the Skia library for UWP, but also supports Uno as well. And it's just, this is built into Skia. You don't need like a special uno.skia NuGet package or anything like that. And it's dealing with, it's tracking the pointer moved, and the main part here is just this on paint surface. So you're getting like, it's truly painting on a Skia canvas, the bitmap that we pass to it, and listening to the pointer events on top of it. And then if we look back here, we see this namespace of IG, and that's Infragistics. So that's their controls for their charts. And down here, just it's a normal XAML page. Get rid of the squigglies. Okay. Oh, they're still there. Great. But yeah, you have your XAML data charts, your axes, your series, and blah, blah, blah. And then you have your crosshair layer, where that's where you saw when I put the mouse over there, which it was sort of lining up with the red, green, blue values. So these are things that are developed by Infragistics that are available for you to use. Another quick one we can look at really quickly is the Syncfusion demo. So Syncfusion is also a component vendor, and they do lots of charts and lots of other things too, and they're really powerful things to display. So if we were to run this one, this is just a sample app where it has a bunch of different charts with fake data. And I'm also running it on the web using WebAssembly with Uno. Please work. There you go. And so you can have a bunch of different charts that we can look at that are available for you to do. And they're also interactive. So if we looked at the donut chart, this is a debug build, so it's slow. If we look at debug chart, you see it's interactive. If I touch it, you know, the little piece of donut moves. It has some hovering abilities, so you can see which values you're looking at. And yeah, basically you can do any type of chart you want. So, and this is all supported by Uno since it was already built for UWP and WinUI. We kind of just got to plug Uno in and you're off to the races to bring it to all these other platforms. So if we look at the code for that one, there's not too much, but it's a little bit verbose, the code. But basically, yeah, you just have you just bring in your control, where is it? Yeah, you just bring in your Syncfusion library of charts, and there you go. You have your charts ready to go. The donut one, which I don't like the way they spell donut, but whatever. Oh, what am I? Yeah, I'm on the donut one. That's why it's the only one here. Yeah, and basically that's all. You can do anything you want with these charts thanks to Uno in the web or Linux or Mac or whatever. This is just a slide to show like some of our partners and clients. So like this is truly in the wild now. It's like used in release, you know. This is being used in the wild, so Uno is out there. So we have clients, like big clients, like, well, some of them are Canadian, so maybe you won't know them, but they're out there now. It's being used. It has been used for years. So it truly is a professionally developed and professionally maintained and used in the professional arena platform. And so for the future of Uno, we're really looking, we're obviously keeping our eyes on WinUI 3.0. So following their updates, we're aligning with WinUI 3. We usually support them on like day 0, basically when they drop a new preview or when they're going to drop WinUI 3 in itself. We're looking to support even more controls. So we have the UI API layer, well, the whole API layer of WinUI is very large. Very large. So we do have a wide breadth of support, but there's always more to support and there's always more to work on. You could always go to our GitHub and check out our backlogs and our issues and help out if you would like. More platforms we'd like to reach even more. And improving performance for sure is definitely one that we're always looking towards. We have some pretty smart people looking at performance, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm not doing that, so thank God. And so if anyone wants to go to this URL, really love the feedback, because I'm trying to gauge like what you guys want to see or what you don't want to see, or if there's something I should focus on more. So yeah, feel free to go there. And if you go there, you can be entered for a chance to win. We have an Intro to Uno platform course online. That's really great. So it really teaches you the ins and outs on how to build enterprise applications. So yeah, I'll keep this up for like a second or two more, but yeah, if you can give me any feedback, it doesn't have to be good feedback, don't worry. Please do that. And with that, that is what I have today. So if there are questions.
Scum Sprocket posted for a green programmer, is UWP the most relatable avenue in understanding how to build apps? What is the relationship between Uno and MS, and how does Maui relate to your position?
Yeah, so good questions. So the first part, so one of the things that we are lucky about is the WinUI has great documentation, or UWP, I guess. Well, at least I think their documentation is pretty good. So there are a lot of there's a lot of material, since it's a UWP, and WinUI is a like maintained by Microsoft. It's out there now. It's been out there for a while. So there are materials to learn from it. And once you learn that, it basically just brings you to those other platforms for free. And you don't need to know too much more than that, but you can always drill down deeper into individual platforms to learn more about its intricacies and things that you can do per platform. Our relationship with Microsoft, I'm not paid enough. Like, I'm not at that level of pay scale where I talk to the Microsoft people, but there's definitely people who talk to Microsoft on our side. We're aligning, I think, a lot with, if you haven't heard of Project Reunion, it's Microsoft's sort of next steps with WinUI to bring it to more platforms. So definitely go check that out. It's on GitHub. Just Google Project Reunion. I think Project Reunion 0.5 is coming up soon. We're always in talks with them. We're trying to get as much support as we can with WinUI, and always matching their features and all that stuff to bring it to new platforms. And as for Maui and like Xamarin Forms and all that stuff, we get asked this question quite a lot, obviously, because we're targeting some of the same platforms. And so just to like step back for a second in case no one knows. So this answer is more regarding like Maui and Xamarin Forms, not Xamarin Classic, since those two terms are like used interchangeably, but they're not one and the same, and it can be confusing. So the easiest way to understand the difference in what our philosophies are, or starting point for Uno platform, is basically Uno taps into a different ecosystem compared to Maui, if you would think about it like that. So we believe WinUI has the richest API set and styling engine and all those things, and therefore merits being brought to all platforms that .NET runs on, including the web and Linux, to create pixel-perfect applications. So Maui starts from sort of like a different starting point. It is the successor of Xamarin Forms, which started as itself an abstract layer on top of Xamarin, which itself is an abstraction layer on top of iOS and Android. And then it expanded that abstraction across even more platforms, which Windows is just one of those platforms. And I believe Maui for the Windows side is going to be relying on WinUI itself. And so when we started Uno, or not me, when Uno was started, they weren't satisfied fully with the experience that produced, those abstractions upon abstractions to different platforms. So that's why Uno kind of like came to be in the first place, and then evolved from there. So we kind of started at the same spot, but we kind of diverged a little bit. Even though we're mapping to some of the same platforms, our philosophies are a little bit different. But it is a very good solution, and it has been obviously very successful. And we're just, it's nice to be compared and to be in the same ring as that sort of thing. And honestly, the more .NET devs we have, the more .NET we can bring to different platforms, the better. So it's great that we both exist, you know. But the biggest differentiators would be that platform-wise, Uno supports out of the box without any additional frameworks or bindings. It supports web as a target, and you can use the XAML that you know with WinUI, as well as Linux as a target. But I'm not sure if they're targeting Linux with Maui. And feature-wise, Uno inherits everything that .NET provides, and it also brings that WinUI XAML and everything the Windows team has worked on, such as accessibility and keyboard inputs and the focus manager and all that fun stuff. So, yeah.
And Martin said, I tried to port a Xamarin app today to Uno and could not figure out how to read an XML file in the project. I'm sure that must be possible. Anyone know how?
Read an XML file. Well, there's definitely been people that have ported Xamarin projects to Uno. Like we have success stories about those quite a bit. It really depends mostly on how much you leverage things like Shell or third-party libraries that you're using. But there is, I should have put a link for it, but we have our Discord. So that's like our main avenue. Well, that and GitHub, but our main avenue of like live support. If you have any questions about Uno or anything like that, we are on the, damn it, I don't have a link. We are on the like Windows community Discord server. Just go to platform.uno and there's going to be a link there for Discord, and hit us up. There's lots of people in there working on really cool stuff, as well as the team itself, that we can answer these questions for you. We're always active on that. But yeah, porting from Xamarin is a thing. People do it and it is possible. But it does have some caveats. Like you got to also think about like, you know, a Xamarin Forms app is built for a small form factor, basically for a phone or a tablet. So you got to start thinking about things like the desktop and the web and how your app is going to look on larger screens. So that's like one little thing you got to catch, since it's going to be brought to larger screens with Uno platform. So yeah, definitely hit us up on Discord if you have any questions. Good.
Yeah, and Hudson was asking about your mouse pointer. What you're using to highlight the mouse?
Like if I zoom in and no, I'm not on the right screen. If I zoom in and stuff, it is called. Oh boy, it is called. 1 second. It's here somewhere. Zoom it, I think. Zoom it. ZOOMIT. I got it from Scott Hanselman. He does it a lot. So it's just basically yeah, I'll show it here again. It's just basically a little tool that you can do to control one. It'll zoom where your cursor is, and then you can start drawing. It basically takes a screenshot and zooms, and then you can draw on it. And
Stark Reactor asked how to remove all the squiggly lines in your XAML.
Yeah, God. This is a problem. It should go away if you, it will be going away in the newer versions of Visual Studio. We've been working a lot with like the Visual Studio team to sort of get better Uno integration into it. But it should go away if you, I closed it. But if you're on the XAML file on the top left, there's the context menu of under which context do you want to be viewing this file? It's like, do you want to view it under the iOS head or the Android head? If you choose UWP, usually everything will just go away. Like all the squigglies will go away. But in newer versions or the next versions of Visual Studio, hopefully, I'm not sure. I don't want to say anything wrong. Anyway, in newer versions of Visual Studio coming up, that shouldn't be a problem anymore. And those squigglies should be gone, no matter which one you're looking at.
All right. And Wes had a question. If I'm currently using MVVM Cross with Xamarin Forms, is there much of a learning curve?
There shouldn't be, because I mean, you should be able to bring because this is basically just for like the Uno platform is just going to be your UI layer, like your presentation layer. You should just be able to take all your view models or whatever you're doing and plop it into any other UI layer. So it shouldn't be a big learning curve at all. But if you do have any issues, definitely hit us up on Discord or Twitter or something. Yeah.
And Scum Sprocket says Uno seems like the only way to do an old school Windows desktop app that extends to Mac OS. Any tips to speed up development? I spend, excuse me. Any tips to speed up development? I spend a ton of time watching the rebuild icon roll to clear up errors.
I'm not sure, like speed up development for Mac OS development. That's something that we're looking at. So for sure, Mac OS is one of our newer platforms. So they're still features and performance increases that haven't been done yet as they have on the other platforms. So it's something that is coming in the future. But any issues, so like we're very, very open on GitHub. We're very welcoming, I mean. So like if you just create an issue saying like if you have some logs or something, like especially if it's build stuff like that, our CTO will ask you for your bin logs from Visual Studio, and we'll rip through them and we'll be able to find any problems. So definitely, yeah, again, those are going to be my answer for a lot of them, but definitely hit us up on GitHub or Discord or something to get some live help, because we're really open to that.
Yeah, I think Jerome was broadcasting on Twitch earlier today.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody that came along with Vimlark. Good to have you. We're kind of wrapping up the end of the meetup. We're asking questions about Uno, a open sourced platform for multi-platform application development. So you can, it's similar to writing I want to say WPF, UWP app, or a Xamarin app, but you can deploy it to Android, iOS, Windows, WebAssembly, Mac and Linux right now.
Yep.
So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask, and we can try to get them answered. Goodness gracious, Wesley.
What did he do? Oh, he's gifting a whole bunch of subscriptions. So welcome, everybody. Appreciate the raid, folks. How was the stream? What are you working on over there? And I think I have the appropriate link to the Discord. I don't Discord a whole lot, so if somebody wants to try that out and see if that works. And apparently I have a frog in my throat, so apologies.
Oh, let me see. Yeah, it should be it. Yeah, UWP community. That's it.
Okay, perfect. So what's next? What's the latest and greatest? I think there were over on Jerome's Twitch earlier this afternoon. I watched for a few minutes, and I think there were some questions about .NET 6, and I've forgotten what exactly he was trying. There were questions about optimizations for .NET 6 and whether or not some of those things are out in preview yet in .NET 6, not in Uno, and then if Uno would be utilizing some of the newer planned features for .NET 6. Do you have any insight into that?
Jerome would be the best to know, but I know he's working he's working a lot on .NET 6 stuff. He's deep in some WebAssembly AOT stuff, so ahead of time compiling. That's a lot of what he's working on now. So he's pulling in those .NET 6 bits. But again, like any evolution, like .NET 6 or with this transition to Maui for things like single project heads instead of having like project heads for all of them. Those are all things that we're going to get for free because other people are working on them and we get to sit on top of that. So .NET 6 is definitely something that's actively being tinkered with and optimized for, and hopefully we'll have support on day zero. That's always our goal. Yeah, we dropped a link to Jerome's channel in chat as well. So Wes is asking, does Uno add much size when compiling down into native app? For instance, does it add much size to an APK in Android? It shouldn't add much more than like a Xamarin app would add, really, because that's really what you're sitting on top of when you're building for Android or building for iOS, say. And things are linked out as much as we can. And Yeah, I don't think it would add too much more. It's a good question, actually. I would like to get down to the bottom of that. But yeah, if I don't answer your questions good enough, definitely tweet me, and I could talk to people smarter than me, and I'll get back to you with better answers. But I don't think it would add much more than what Xamarin is already adding.
So here's one. So in terms of versioning, what versions of iOS and Android is Uno compatible with right now, or will it be in .NET once .NET 6 and the WinUI 3 comes out? How far back in the Android and iOS versions will we be able to go with that?
Yeah, Android. I believe we're targeting like Android 10 and 11 now. I think we just dropped Android 9 and below. Xamarin, well, basically anything that Xamarin supports for Android and iOS is going to be what we support.
Okay.
And same idea for Mac. It's like a Xamarin Mac 20 is the target framework moniker or whatever. So anything that Xamarin is targeting, that's what we'll be targeting as well. Yeah.
Okay, so with .NET 5, it's like APK, 28 or whatever. Is it possible to, so like if we stay on .NET 3 whatever or 2, is it possible to use those older versions with the latest version of Uno?
I have a feeling. Oh God, I'm going to say something wrong here. I would say no, because I don't think, because basically we removed the support for older versions of Android from the builds. But yeah, I don't think so. You could use the latest version of Uno with that.
Okay.
So where's a good place for folks to go and get started? Of course, there is platform.uno. It looks like there's a number of different repos out on the Uno platform GitHub account. Looks like workshops and talks and calculator. Calculator was my favorite when we talked to Jerome. Looked like the Windows 10 calculator redone as an Uno app.
Yeah, that's a good one to take a look at. But yeah, definitely. So we're in the middle of sort of refactoring or getting some better documentation out there. There is a lot of documentation on the platform.uno site, but we're revamping that as well. So it should be more up to date and have more examples, as well as things like I showed the Uno gallery at first. So there'll be things like deep linking into the different samples, and we'll have a wider breadth of samples in the Uno gallery, so you can get a better view of those types of things. I'm trying to think of like bigger ideas, like I want an Uno reactive UI, something to look into. That'll be part of our documentation, but we'd have to look at, I would say, the documentation for now, as well as like you said, the Uno GitHub has a good amount of sample applications, like the calculator or Channel 9 implementation for the videos and stuff like that would be a good place to start. Yeah.
And do you have any personal repos that you want to point people towards? I think we linked earlier to your Dex Uno.
Oh yeah, I have. Let me just put it here. It's on my other computer, but I have. So I'm working on. So if anyone is familiar with Xamarin development and stuff, they may have used Xamarin debug rainbows before. GitHub is not loading for me. But yeah, basically.
I've got your account up. It looks like it's the highest repo right now.
Yeah. And so basically, a lot of the times when you're trying to lay stuff out and you're looking at, like, you have a bunch of grids and stack panels and all that stuff, and you're like, where the hell am I? People a lot of the time put different backgrounds on different panels so like this one's red, blue, and green, and blah, blah, blah. So what this does is it basically on any level of your UI in your visual tree, you can have an attached property to say use the debug rainbows, and it'll randomize colors for every panel, every background of everything. But on top of that, it also you can render a grid with like major and minor lines and stuff like that. If you want to display a grid of, like, however many pixels wide and long and stuff like that on your screen to align your UI elements. You don't have to do that yourself. You just say show grid on your page and it'll render a grid like that. And so I'm bringing those capabilities that were originally from the Debug Rainbows by Stephen. Oh man, I'm going to mess up his last name. Thewison, I don't know. But his library, so I'm bringing that to all the platforms that Uno supports. And basically how it's working now is it's using that Skia canvas view that I was showing before. So I took his logic for what he drew on the native like CG layer that he did for iOS, and I just made it run in Skia. And that's also one of the things that Jerome is looking into is Skiaception, we call it. So getting a Skia backend to support Skia itself, so you can have a Skia canvas and a Skia app, and that's the only blocker right now for my GitHub or for my repo. Sorry, is like on Skia it's not working. So on Linux, basically, it's not working, but I'll get there. Yeah.
All right, it looks like Scum Sprocket had an issue with what's up with issues like I just update everything in my NuGet updates list, stuff quits compiling, like the Microsoft logging stuff now. Is there a short list of how to keep things rolling?
Yeah, the logging stuff I remember Jerome working on today. I think he just fixed it. But yeah, things shouldn't break. Yeah, so we have like a system of canaries that are called. So all of the professional applications that are being run by the company, like the umbrella company that's running Uno, we have canary builds that always use the latest package of everything, and then basically we fix those. Are like high priority issues if anything breaks in those, and we have people watching those, QA guys watching that all the time. I would like, if you run into any issues, just open up an issue on GitHub right away, because we may have missed it, or we're probably working on it, but that dev cycle doesn't fix them right away. But it's hopefully shouldn't be happening too much more through stable releases, like because we do have every day there are going to be multiple pre-release builds, and you always got to be careful with those because they always might break something. So you got to be careful with those.
Okay. Any additional questions, chat? Go ahead and drop those in. We want to be sure to say thanks to Steve for presenting at stpete.net meetup. We will be back for the meetup every month, the second Tuesday of the month, with a lovely contestant. So if anybody has any suggestions on if they want to volunteer themselves or volunteer a coworker to speak, if you have suggestions on topics, if you want to just drop topics in chat for things that you'd like to see at the stpete.net meetup, we'll continue to host the meetup virtually until it's safe to get back in person. And then once we're back in person, we will continue to live stream as well. On the Six Figure Developer channel, we continue to live stream the podcast at 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday evenings, and live coding Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. So you can join us there. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you can get a free subscription there as well. We've got some thanks in there, so we appreciate that. And we'll drop links to everything in chat as well. So again, here is Steve. Here is your GitHub account. Here is your Twitter account. So if we missed any questions or want to follow up and follow along there, be sure to do that as well. And the GitHub repo for the Uno platform as well. If there are no additional questions, then we can look to see who we can raid this evening and say thanks, everybody. Chat, do drop into chat there, topics, suggestions, speakers, things like that. What would you like to see? Give us some ideas. Drop a line in chat for us.